It takes a long time, and it takes a long time.
For us, it's just been showing up day after day for 5+ years.
It's really the exception that proves the rule, and anyone who sets themselves up with that business plan is going to be disappointed.
So we started with a crowdfunding campaign, which raised about $300,000, and that paid for myself and my co-founder Hannah to start working on the prototype. We had lots of help from open source contributors as well, and we hired our first person off the back of that money, knowing that we had a runway to profitability. Not a runway to the next funding round, because we're not for profit, we're open source, and we're completely bootstrapped, other than the crowdfunding. We had a runway to profitability, so we knew that that Kickstarter money would get us only as far as we could be frugal with spending it. And by that point, if we weren't making money, there's no way to raise a venture round for a non-profit org. So it was a very hard, clear deadline that approached, and eventually we proved our business model and hit profitability at the 11-month mark.
You know, it took us a while before we were able to start making real money. We were making small amounts of money, and we were able to raise money. I would say, we started in October 2011. It really wasn't until January 2014 where we were making any sort of real money. I think January 2014 is when we crossed over into the, $1 million a year sort of territory. We were at it for a little over 2 years before, you really had any sort of success, I guess. Often, people will say, was there an inflection point in the business? Is a common question you get. And yeah, there are like certain inflection points, but often the inflection points don't mean that the money changed rapidly, right? For us, it's just been showing up day after day for 5+ years, putting in the effort, and that effort has just always led to little bit better, until, you realize if you do that for 5 years in a row, it's like, wow, you can actually build something pretty impressive.
It took us, frankly speaking, not that long, as we were kind of a spin-off from the Presking company. Mm-hmm. So pretty early on, we could use the resources of that old company to build Mansion. Yep. Okay, but Presking was paying for the build, kind of. It's true that still at the freemium business model, we were generating a couple of thousand, and we even crossed like the tens of thousands of MRR. Okay, so monthly recurring revenue, so which was like pretty decent money. But where that's what I was saying before is that we kind of knew that the scalability of this model would have been a very, very big challenge. So that's why we moved to the SME. And here, in terms of revenue making, it has been much more aggressive and much more advantageous for us.
We had a training business already, and then we launched a software business, and there was a period of overlap between those two businesses where we were making money in training and then spending that money to fund Edgar. We had really strong growth, so we hit $1 million in annual reoccurring revenue 11 months after launch, which I thought that was pretty awesome. That was definitely a big goal of mine, to hit $1 million ARR. I did not know that we would get there so quickly. So I think for me at that point, I guess for me, that's when it felt like real money. And that's when I felt like, I knew before then, obviously, that things were going well. But I think once we hit that point, I felt like I could be certain, like, we have built a real business that is sustainable and that is going to continue to grow.
We had a landing page that explained what Printful was to another customers of another startup we have, Starter Vitamins. And from the email list we sent to Starter Vitamins list, there was already much interest in Printful products. So we started charging customers on day one. And as I said, the first months the revenue was $800, and by end of the year it was close to $100,000. So it was actually growing really quickly also initially.
I realized I'm really one of the lucky few here, because I was profitable after 3 weeks.
Wow.
I had sold $10,000 in software after 6 weeks. I just found product market fit immediately. It kind of blew up. to my face.
Real money is always in the eye of the beholder, right? 'Cause
Yeah.
we're like coming right out of college and we were used to being like super cheap, which is really, really fortunate because Olark started being a real company in 2009. The economy was tanked. We were coming out of recession. For the first few years, we just bootstrapped it. Like we would have a little graph that we'd look at every day, and we'd have little dotted lines like coming across the y-axis of that graph. We'd be like, okay, when we hit this mark of revenue, we're gonna buy a grill, or like we're gonna eat at Whole Foods. From 2009 to 2011, it was just the four of us living in this house in Palo Alto. It was about a year and a half from when we started to when we made enough to hire one person.
Yeah.
At that time, we were paying that person more than we were making ourselves. You know, over time, we had like pretty steady month-over-month growth, and we would hire people when we could and just grow the business. And now we're about 42 people spread out all around the U.S., which is pretty exciting, and we're continuing to grow.
The first big deal was what is now hundreds of thousands of dollars for that customer that they pay us every year. But I was naive enough to sell them a site license for their entire organization, which is many hundreds of thousands of people, for $1,500 because I really wanted that deal.
Yeah.
And you do what beginning founders do: you underprice, and that was the first real money. I think for those $1,500, we spent over a year building features for them.
No kidding.
So in that sense, it was a bad deal. The good thing about it is that we spun off those features in GitLab Enterprise Edition, and that was the start of a better way to monetize it. And that was the big change we needed. We tried everything: donations, subscriptions for support, paid development that we did for people. It all didn't work. Really, open core, selling a software license on top of your open source product was the thing that changed our company and allowed us to grow.
That's phenomenal. So about how long did it take from when you guys started to then, to when you felt like you were starting to make real money?
So that was about a year.
And in my first business, I started working on this project in the summer of 2001. There was a conference, a trade show in Las Vegas. I was like, if I can't get a signed contract coming out of that conference in 4 months' time, then I got to get a job. I got to go for somebody else, you know. Unless you get real feedback from the market in this direction, you know, you gotta wonder if you're barking up the wrong tree.
So I think that we were after year one, probably $20,000 after roughly estimating. And then year two, 35. Year three, like 75, 85. And now year four, we're up to like one, you know. So it takes a long time.
Yeah, that's great. So it took about 3 years then to hit that $1 million annual run rate.
Yeah.